Claire Donovan didn't plan on falling for anyone, not after her last breakup left her rebuilding every part of her life. She had her career, her apartment, and her quiet routines. It wasn't thrilling, but it was safe. That's all she wanted, safety. So when her best friend Jess called on a rainy Friday evening, insisting she come out for dinner, Claire almost said no. "Come on, Claire," Jess pleaded through the phone. "You've been working nonstop. You need to meet real people, not just your email inbox." Claire sighed, staring at her reflection in the window. "Jess, if this is another setup, it's not," Jess interrupted quickly, which was exactly what she said the last 3 times she had set Claire up. Still, an hour later, Claire found herself driving downtown, the rain streaking across her windshield. She told herself she was just being a good friend, that this wasn't a date, no matter what Jess had planned. The restaurant was warm and full of soft golden light. Jess waved from a corner table, her grin wide and suspicious. Beside her sat a man, tall, with kind blue eyes, dark hair, and an easy smile. He stood when Claire approached, and that alone made her pause. Not many men still did that. "Claire, this is Ethan Parker," Jess announced, far too cheerfully. "He works in design. I thought you two might get along." Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. "Jess," but Jess just raised her eyebrows, pretending innocence. "What?" "We're all just having dinner." Ethan smiled, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Claire. Jess has mentioned you a few times, mostly about how you're impossible to get out of the office." Claire shook his hand, half smiling. "That sounds like her." They sat down, and for a few minutes the conversation stayed light. Food, weather, weekend plans. But then, right as the waitress left with their orders, Jess's phone rang. She excused herself, saying, "I'll just take this call outside," and disappeared, leaving the two of them alone. Claire leaned back, crossing her arms. "She really thinks she's subtle, doesn't she?" Ethan laughed softly. "Honestly, I think she's pretty proud of herself right now." Claire couldn't help but laugh, too. Something about him felt calm. He didn't rush to fill every silence, didn't make small talk for the sake of it. When he spoke, it was thoughtful, easy, but genuine. She found herself relaxing without realizing it. As dinner went on, they discovered small connections. Both loved hiking. Both lived near the same park. Both had once dreamed of traveling through Europe but never found the time. Ethan told her about growing up in Chicago, moving to Seattle to start his design career, and how he liked sketching strangers in coffee shops when he needed inspiration. Claire told him about her marketing job, how stressful it was, but how she loved the creative part of it. Building stories for brands, finding the right words to make people feel something. "I like that," Ethan said. "You make things come alive with words." The compliment caught her off guard, not because it was flirty, but because it felt sincere. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be really seen. When Jess finally returned, grinning like she'd just orchestrated a miracle, Claire tried not to look too amused. Ethan was polite, helping her with her coat when they got up to leave. Outside, the rain had turned to a light drizzle, the city glowing beneath the streetlights. "Do you want me to walk you to your car?" he asked. Claire hesitated. She usually said no to things like that. She didn't like owing favors or creating expectations. But tonight she didn't want to end the conversation just yet. "Sure," she said. They walked quietly, the air damp and cool. The sound of their footsteps mixed with the soft rain. When they reached her car, Ethan smiled gently. "Can I be honest?" Claire tilted her head, curious. "Go ahead." "I wasn't expecting tonight to be much," he said. "I thought Jess was overhyping it, but I'm really glad I came." Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Me too," she said softly. For a moment, they just stood there, two strangers who didn't quite feel like strangers anymore. Then Ethan said, "Maybe we could get coffee sometime. Just us, no Jess pretending to take a call." Claire laughed. "That depends. Are you sure you're not working with her on this matchmaking plan?" "Completely innocent," he said, raising his hand in mock honesty. She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Coffee sounds nice." "Good," he said, smiling. "Then it's a plan." As she drove home, Claire's phone buzzed with a text from Jess. "Jess, You're welcome. I know that smile means it went well. Claire, you're unbelievable. Jess, so, coffee date confirmed? Claire. Don't push it. But she was smiling, and Jess knew it. When Claire got home, she made tea and sat by the window watching the rain. She tried to brush off the feeling that lingered. That spark of excitement she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, just quiet and real. She reminded herself not to get carried away. It was just one evening, just good conversation. But as she replayed Ethan's voice, his easy laugh, and the way he'd said, "I'm glad I came," she felt something shift. It wasn't that she was falling for him already. It was more like she'd remembered what it felt like to want to. For years, she'd told herself that love was too messy, too uncertain, too painful to risk again. But tonight, she realized that maybe the real risk wasn't falling. It was never trying again at all. And even though she would never admit it to Jess, somewhere deep down, Claire felt that this setup, the one she swore she didn't want, might just lead her somewhere she'd been too scared to go for a long time. As she turned off the light and climbed into bed, the sound of rain faded into the background. Her phone buzzed again. One last message, Ethan. Thanks for tonight. You make conversation feel easy. Coffee soon? Claire smiled to herself, typing back a simple reply. Claire, I'd like that. She didn't know it yet, but that small message would mark the beginning of something much bigger, something neither of them had expected when Jess decided to play matchmaker that night. Because sometimes, the best surprises come from the people who know us better than we know ourselves. And sometimes, love doesn't arrive when you're looking for it. It finds you when you're finally ready to stop running. That night, as she drifted to sleep, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years, hope. Quiet, gentle, but strong enough to change everything. The following week, Claire tried not to overthink the text messages from Ethan. They weren't flirty, just easy and thoughtful, the kind that made her smile without realizing it. He'd ask about her day, send a picture of his messy sketchbook, or share a random fact he'd learned that morning. Every message felt light but genuine. It had been a long time since she'd looked forward to hearing from someone like that. By Thursday, he finally asked, "Still up for that coffee?" She stared at her phone for a few seconds before typing back, "Yes, Saturday." The cafe he picked was small and quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Claire arrived early, pretending to scroll through her phone while secretly watching the door. When Ethan walked in, wearing a gray sweater, damp hair from the drizzle outside, she felt her chest tighten slightly. It wasn't just that he looked good. It was that familiar warmth again, the one that made her forget to guard herself. "Hey," he greeted, smiling as he sat down. "I was starting to think you'd bail." Claire laughed softly. "I almost did. I don't usually do this. Good thing you didn't," he said, "because now I get to buy you the world's best cappuccino." He wasn't wrong. The coffee was perfect, but the conversation was even better. They talked for hours about everything, her love for old movies, his failed attempt at cooking, their shared obsession with autumn rain. Claire found herself opening up more than she expected, about her last relationship, how it ended without closure, how she'd built walls ever since. Ethan listened quietly, never interrupting, just nodding with understanding. When she apologized for rambling, he shook his head. "Don't. I like hearing how people think, especially when they're honest." His calm sincerity disarmed her. For once, she didn't feel like she had to act fine or pretend she was over everything. There was no pressure, no judgment. Just two people sitting across from each other, slowly letting down their guards. As they left the cafe, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, glinting off wet sidewalks. Ethan walked her to her car again, just like last time. "So," he said with a grin, "do I get to see you again? Or do I have to bribe Jess for another setup?" Claire smiled. "You can just ask me next time." "Good," he said. "Then dinner next week?" "Dinner sounds nice." That night, Jess called as soon as Claire got home. "Okay, spill. Was it awkward? Amazing? Did he talk too much about design again?" Claire rolled her eyes, laughing. "It was good. He's easy to talk to, and no, he didn't talk too much. Actually, he listened. Jess gasped dramatically. He listened. That's it. He's perfect. You're welcome. Claire laughed again. But later, lying in bed, she found herself thinking about Ethan's quiet way of noticing things. How he watched her when she spoke. Like her words mattered. She wasn't sure what this was turning into, but it felt real. And that scared her a little. Their next few weeks became a rhythm. Dinners that turned into long walks. Coffee dates that turned into confessions. Ethan never pushed her to define anything, and maybe that's why she kept saying yes. He'd show up with small things that showed he paid attention. A playlist of songs she mentioned once, a sketch of the lake where they'd walked, a book she said she wanted to read. One night after dinner, they sat by the pier, the city lights shimmering across the water. The air was cool, their breath visible in the night air. You ever think about how people just find each other? Ethan asked quietly. Sometimes, Claire said, staring at the rippling water. Mostly I think about how people lose each other. He turned to her, eyes soft. Maybe finding someone isn't about timing. Maybe it's about being ready to try again. His words hit deeper than he probably realized. Claire looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel afraid. She didn't say anything, but her silence said enough. Ethan reached for her hand, not forcefully, not dramatically, just gently. And she let him. The days that followed felt different. She smiled more at work, laughed more freely, and her coworkers noticed. Even Jess teased her about the glow, but Claire didn't want to rush it. This wasn't some whirlwind romance. It was something steady, something she could trust. Then one Friday, Ethan invited her to an art exhibit he was showcasing in. You should come, he said. It's nothing huge, just a few designs and sketches, but I'd like you to see. When she arrived, the gallery buzzed with people. His work, minimalist, thoughtful, full of emotion, filled one corner of the room. She watched him from across the space, talking with other artists, confident but humble. He caught her eye, smiled, and walked over. I'm glad you came, he said softly. I wouldn't miss it, she replied. He showed her one sketch, a simple one, of a woman sitting by a window, rain falling outside. This one's new, he said. I finished it a few days ago. Claire looked closer. The resemblance was subtle but clear. It was her. You drew me? Sort of, he said, smiling shyly. It reminded me of how you looked that night at the restaurant. Thoughtful but strong. Her heart fluttered. No one had ever seen her like that before. As the night went on, she mingled with others, proud of him, proud to be there. But near the end of the evening, Jess appeared, grinning as always, and whispered, Okay, you two look disgustingly adorable. Claire laughed. You started this, remember? Yeah, Jess said. And now I'm taking full credit. Ethan joined them, draping his jacket over Claire's shoulders when he noticed she was cold. The gesture was simple, but it warmed her more than she expected. Later, as they left the gallery, the city quieted around them. Claire leaned against his car, looking at him under the streetlight. You know, she said softly, I didn't want to come to that dinner. I thought Jess was being ridiculous. I didn't want to either, he admitted. I almost canceled. They both laughed. And then, in a moment that felt inevitable, Ethan took a step closer. I'm glad neither of us did, he said. The air between them shifted. Not rushed, not uncertain, just honest. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch light. She didn't pull away. Me too, she whispered. And as the city hummed quietly around them, Claire realized something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes when you finally find someone who feels like home. That night, driving back, she thought about how unpredictable life could be. One dinner she didn't want, one friend who refused to give up on her, and suddenly, her whole world looked different. She wasn't sure where this was heading, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't need to know. She just wanted to be in this moment, to let it unfold, one soft heartbeat at a time. and deep down she couldn't help but wonder. Maybe Jess hadn't just set her up. Maybe fate had helped too. Weeks passed, and what started as an unexpected setup turned into something that felt almost too good to be real. Claire and Ethan fell into a rhythm that neither of them had planned, but both quietly cherished. Their days were filled with small moments that built something unspoken between them. Morning texts, shared playlists, late-night phone calls that ended with sleepy laughter. It wasn't dramatic or loud, just steady, honest, and real. But with comfort came questions. Claire began to wonder what this really was. They hadn't labeled anything. They hadn't said the words that defined it. Part of her liked it that way, free, without pressure. But another part, the one that still carried scars from being left before, worried that silence could mean uncertainty. One Friday evening, they met for dinner at a cozy Italian place downtown. The air was cool, filled with the smell of roasted garlic and rain on pavement. Claire noticed how Ethan looked different lately, less guarded, more open. He told her about his new project, how he might travel for a design conference in Chicago. He spoke with excitement, but Claire felt a small ache inside. "That's great," she said with a smile. "You should go." He nodded, but his eyes softened. "Yeah, but I'll miss our walks by the lake." She laughed lightly. "It's just a few weeks, Ethan. You'll survive." He smiled, but there was something thoughtful behind it, something that made her chest tighten. After dinner, they walked under the glowing streetlights, their hands brushing once, then again, until finally, he took hers. Neither said a word. It felt natural, like the world around them had fallen quiet, so this simple moment could exist. When they reached her car, Ethan turned to her, his voice gentle. "Claire, can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Do you ever think about what this is? Between us?" Her heart skipped. "All the time." He smiled faintly. "Me too. I just didn't want to rush it. I like what we have, but I also don't want to keep pretending it's not something more." Claire looked at him, unsure how to respond. The truth was, she wanted the same thing, but fear lingered in her. She didn't want to fall again, only to lose herself in someone else's story. "I just need to be sure," she said quietly. "I've been through something that made me question everything. Trust, timing, even love. And this, it feels different, but it also scares me." Ethan stepped closer. "You don't have to be sure right now," he said softly. "Just don't walk away because you're afraid." His words hit deeper than she expected. For a moment, they stood there, the night holding its breath between them. Then Ethan squeezed her hand lightly and said, "I'll wait, however long it takes." That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She replayed everything. His tone, his words, the look in his eyes when he said he'd wait. It was the kind of promise that didn't need grand gestures to feel real. The next morning, Jess showed up at her apartment unannounced, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You have that look," Jess said immediately. "What happened?" Claire sighed. "He asked what we are." Jess's eyes widened. "And what did you say?" "I didn't know what to say. He said he'd wait." Jess smiled knowingly. "Then maybe it's time you stop running. Not every guy leaves, Claire." "I know," Claire murmured. "But what if this doesn't last?" Jess took her hand. "Then at least you'll know you didn't hold back because of the past." Her words lingered all day. Claire realized she'd been living half-present, still protecting herself from something that was long gone. Ethan wasn't the man who left her before. He was someone entirely new, someone who made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. When Ethan left for Chicago the next week, they stayed in touch constantly. He'd send her pictures from the city, random voice notes about his day, and late-night texts that made her laugh out loud. Still, she missed him more than she expected. Every evening felt quieter without him. One night, as she sat by her window watching the rain, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. "I wish you were here. This city's great, but it doesn't feel right without you." Claire smiled at the screen, her heart swelling. She typed back before she could overthink it. "Then come home soon. I think I miss you too." A week later he did. She went to meet him at the airport, nervous but excited. When he spotted her in the crowd, he dropped his bag and hugged her tightly. It wasn't the kind of hug that needed words. It was full of everything they hadn't said yet. They drove back in comfortable silence, the city lights reflecting in the car windows. At a red light, Ethan turned to her. "I thought about you every day," he said softly. "More than I should have." Claire met his eyes. "Then maybe it's not too much. Maybe it's just right." Something shifted in that moment. Something clear, steady, and simple. They weren't just two people trying to figure things out anymore. They were two hearts finally brave enough to choose each other. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened. They spent weekends exploring nearby towns, cooking together, and sometimes doing nothing at all, just sitting on the couch, talking about dreams they hadn't shared with anyone else. Ethan was patient, steady, and kind. He didn't fill silence with words. He filled it with presence. But life, as always, had a way of testing timing. One evening, Ethan got a call, an offer from a major design firm in New York. It was everything he'd worked for, a dream he'd mentioned more than once. Claire could see the conflict in his eyes as he told her. "They want me to start next month," he said quietly. "It's a big step, but it's far." Her chest tightened, but she forced a smile. "You should take it." "I don't want to leave you," he said. "Ethan," she said softly, "this is your dream. I can't be the reason you don't chase it." He looked at her for a long moment, then whispered, "What if I want both?" Claire didn't know how to answer. She wanted him to stay, but she also knew love wasn't about holding someone back. That night, they sat on her porch in silence, the sound of crickets filling the space between them. Finally, Ethan said, "Maybe this is our test. If it's real, distance won't break it." She nodded, tears stinging her eyes. "Maybe you're right." They held hands until the sky faded to gray. Neither wanted to say goodbye, but both knew it was coming. When he finally left for New York, the airport goodbye was quiet but full of meaning. No promises, no dramatic speeches, just a lingering touch, a shared look, and a soft, "I'll see you soon." As Claire watched him disappear through security, she felt both heartbreak and hope. For once, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She had found something real, and she believed it wouldn't fade with distance. Back in her car, she opened her phone to find a message from Ethan already waiting for her. It simply read, "Don't forget, I'm still waiting, just from a different city now." She smiled through her tears, whispering to herself, "I won't make you wait forever." And deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of their story, just the next chapter waiting to be written. Months passed after Ethan's move to New York, and though miles separated them, Claire felt him everywhere, in her morning coffee, her evening walks, and even in the songs they once shared. Their connection didn't fade. It evolved. They texted daily, had late-night video calls, and sent each other random photos of their days. It wasn't easy, but it was real. Claire had never been in a long-distance relationship before, yet she found herself waiting for his messages with the same anticipation she used to save for real-life moments. Ethan, on the other hand, was thriving professionally. His new job was challenging, and the pace of New York life pushed him harder than ever. But no matter how busy his days got, he always made time for Claire. Even a short text like, "Just landed a new project, wish you were here to celebrate," made her heart race. Still, reality had its moments of doubt. There were nights when Claire stared at her phone, waiting for his reply, only to remind herself that his silence didn't mean he was gone, it just meant he was working. And there were mornings when she questioned how long they could keep this up. Love, after all, needed more than words on a screen. Jess, ever the blunt best friend, noticed the change in Claire. One afternoon over lunch, she asked, "So, are you two still, whatever you are?" Claire laughed softly. "We're still us, just us in different time zones." Jess leaned forward. "And are you happy?" Claire paused. "I think so. It's hard sometimes, but it's worth it." Jess smiled knowingly. "Then don't let fear ruin something that feels right. If he's still showing up, he's trying." That night, as Claire sat by her window scrolling through photos of them, her phone buzzed. It was Ethan. His text said, "Can I call you?" I have news. When he appeared on screen, his smile was different. Nervous, but excited. Claire, he said, I've been offered a chance to lead a new design project. Back in Seattle, her heart skipped. Wait, what? He nodded. It's the same company, just a new branch. I'd be back in a month if I accept. Claire couldn't stop smiling. You're serious? Completely. But I wanted to talk to you first. This city's been great for my career, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. You do, the words hit her like a wave. She didn't say anything for a moment, afraid that if she did, she'd start crying. When she finally found her voice, it was soft. Then come home, Ethan, come back. He laughed, the tension in his shoulders easing. You have no idea how much I've missed hearing that. The following weeks passed quickly. Claire found herself counting down the days, her excitement mixed with nervousness. It had been months since they'd seen each other in person. What if things felt different? What if distance had changed them? But every time she started to doubt, she'd hear his voice in her head. Calm, steady, reassuring. When the day finally came, Claire stood at the airport again, just like before. She watched passengers pour out until she saw him. Taller, a little more tired-looking, but still completely him. The moment their eyes met, all her doubts vanished. He dropped his bag, just like last time, and wrapped her in a hug that felt like coming home. I told you I'd find my way back, he whispered. She laughed, holding on to him. You always keep your word, don't you? They left the airport hand in hand, catching up like no time had passed. That evening, they sat at their favorite lakeside spot, the same one where they'd had so many quiet talks before. The sunset painted the water gold, and the air was cool with the hint of spring. Ethan looked at her, his expression thoughtful. You know, I never believed Jess when she said she knew the perfect girl for me. I thought she was just being dramatic. Claire smiled. That sounds like Jess. But she was right, he said softly. You're it, Claire. The calm to my chaos. The reason I look forward to every single day. She felt her throat tighten. Ethan? He reached out, brushing his thumb over her hand. You don't have to say anything. I just need you to know. This isn't something I take lightly. I didn't move back just for a job. I came back for you. Because what we have is real. And I don't want to waste another minute wondering what could be. For a moment, all she could do was look at him. The man who had walked into her life because of a setup she never wanted, and somehow became the one she couldn't imagine her life without. Finally, she smiled. Then stop wondering. I'm here, Ethan. I've been here all along. They didn't need grand gestures or perfect words. The moment spoke for itself. Two people who found love when they weren't looking for it. Who faced distance and doubt, yet still found their way back. As the sky darkened, they sat in silence, watching the city lights reflect on the water. Claire leaned against his shoulder, and for the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. Later that week, Jess invited them over for dinner. When she opened the door and saw them standing side by side, she smirked. Well, look who finally figured it out. Ethan laughed. You set us up, remember? Jess shrugged, pretending to be modest. Yeah, but I didn't think it would actually work this well. Claire hugged her tightly. You're impossible, but thank you, Jess winked. I expect a wedding invite someday. Everyone laughed, but the words lingered. That night, after they left Jess's house, Ethan and Claire walked through the quiet streets, holding hands. Do you ever think about that? He asked suddenly. About what? The future, us, she smiled up at him. Every day. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Then maybe we should start building it. Claire didn't need to ask what he meant. The look in his eyes said it all. This wasn't just love. It was commitment, trust, and something deeper. The kind of bond that didn't fade when life got complicated. I think, she said softly. We already are. Ethan leaned his forehead against hers, smiling. Good, because I'm not planning on letting go this time. As they stood there under the city lights, Claire thought back to that night months ago. The dinner she almost didn't go to. The stranger who smiled like he already knew her. The best friend who refused to let her give up on love. Funny how life worked. She had spent years protecting her heart, building walls she thought kept her safe. And then Ethan came along, steady, kind and patient, and somehow, without even trying, he broke through every single one. When they finally said goodnight, Claire felt something she hadn't in a long time: certainty. Not the kind that comes from perfect plans, but the kind that grows quietly, built on moments that truly matter. Love hadn't arrived how she expected, but it had arrived right on time,